everyone, welcome back to WheelNutsF1. Tonight we will be discussing the Japanese Grand Prix. Quite an interesting race weekend. Our first
Japanese.
sprint weekend of 2024. What did you think, JB?
Well, it was a great race. Not quite the Japanese Grand Prix, but the
Everyone,
Chinese
welcome
Grand
back
Prix.
to
Oh
WheelNutsF1.
my days,
Tonight
what
we
is
will be
going on?
discussing the
Sorry, just
Japanese
one
Grand Prix.
second. I don't know what was going on, it was doubling our audio. It was a crazy, kind of weird race. I don't know what to say about some of the situations, but we'll get into that as we go. Decent race. I mean, there were decent overtaking opportunities. We saw, especially with like Stroll and Magnussen, there was a lot of wheel-to-wheel opportunities. Um,
Dude.
Pretty good racing overall. Obviously, people who watch Formula One just to see who wins and loses, or just to watch whoever comes P1. I mean, it was probably still quite a boring race for them. But in the grand scheme of things, there were a lot of there was a lot of strategy mix-up. There was a lot of safety cars. So I mean, you can't really complain. It was a decent race.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was nice to go back to China. I think this year the crowd looked a lot more. I mean, it's the first time it was sold out this year.
Mm,
I don't know if you knew that.
for
So
sure.
that was quite interesting. Zhao obviously making a big difference there. Um, and yeah, I think let's go through the weekend as it happened. I think one of the definite highlights of the weekend had to have been the sprint qualifying. I mean,
For sure.
whoa, SQ3 went crazy with the rain, dude.
Yeah. I mean, Max put up his banker lap, and I mean, obviously his banker lap was good enough for pole anyway, and then he improved on it. But I mean, just the complete mix-up in the changeable conditions was absolutely bonkers. I thought that the most exciting part about the whole weekend was that SQ3 session. Um,
Agreed.
Obviously, I mean, the result you can't complain. Getting Fernando and Lewis that close up to the front of the grid. I mean, that's always going to be an exciting start. Obviously, the Red Bulls just it's too good at the moment to be caught by either of those two cars.
Dude,
But I mean, really, you could
it's
see
too good to be held up. I mean, you can't even hold it up. So it's not even like someone like Lewis, who is one of the more experienced drivers. He couldn't do anything to stop them.
exactly that. And I mean, like Norris getting on pole was always, I mean,
That was cool.
that was really really cool. Sorry, I was thinking I got sprint quali and regular qualifying mixed up, but Norris on pole's always really cool. Watching him blunder it into turn one was quite funny as well. You kind of avoided jumping in a canal, which was quite good. Um,
But I I I I actually got drilled because the same goes for you. Does that mean if a Mercedes wins a sprint, you're getting the tattoo?
oh yeah,
Because
oh
we've got
yeah,
similar tattoos. Okay, so I was fucking saved then.
oh yeah, oh yeah. No, I would have held you to it. I think everybody in the chat as well, and all of our viewers would have held you to it as well. But
That's fine, that's fine.
no, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's comical at this point, kind of Lando's starts to the weekends, but you know what, you can't really complain. That SQ3 session was quite exciting. Obviously, they were never going to hold up Max in race condition. Lewis, bang up drive in the sprint quali. Um, Again, I don't really understand why he was experimenting with his setup so much when it came to the regular race. Um, but yeah, I mean, just shows experience really does play dividends in those kind of situations, and even though the McLaren was on pole, I think that Lando put together probably like as good of a lap as he could have in those conditions. But really, the rest of the drivers struggling around while the two experienced old dogs managed to make it through that close on the front row and on the second row. I mean, that was just really, really good to see.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I felt this weekend also was another chance for Lando Norris to show that experience in F1 does certainly help. His knowledge on the tires this weekend, the way he was managing the race really came in handy whilst Oscar was struggling his ass off.
For sure,
So I thought
exactly
that
that.
was quite a weekend to step up. Yeah, Ferrari had quite an interesting race weekend. I loved them getting wheels out. That was quite interesting.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, you know what? I'd rather have that than have a situation where the tensions boil over due to team orders. We've seen that kind of stuff happen in the past where, Rubens Barrichello started getting a bit. The relationship with him and Michael Schumacher started to fizzle out a bit, especially when team orders started coming into play. Felipe Massa and Fernando Alonso is a big example where obviously we got the famous radio quote of Felipe, Fernando is
yeah.
faster than you. That kind of stuff, it really does not benefit your team. sure, if you're in a championship fight, and I mean, I was actually arguing with people in the Scuderia Ferrari Instagram accounts comment section because they were saying that it's useless and that we need to be focusing on catching Red Bull and we need to try and get points onto the one driver as soon as possible and not fight with each other. And I'm just sitting here thinking, bro, we are not fighting the Red Bulls. I mean, realistically,
No.
until Imola comes around, Imola we might be able to get an
Yeah.
upgrade that allows us to fight at some tracks. But this is going to be a Red Bull one season. This it's pretty much in the writing at this point. So I don't know. Up until Imola, I'm very happy to let them just fight around. It was exciting to watch. I love watching two teammates fight, keeping it respectful to an extent. Um, but I mean, I also like the fact that after that they stepped aside and Carlos said, "Listen, I went over the line." In previous races, Charles has gone over the line. We always go over the line, but at least we know once we go over that line, over that limit, over the where we kind of do something reckless, then we just tone it back a bit. And then they have enough faith in each other as drivers to know that they can do that kind of stuff without absolutely bottling it and crashing into each other.
Yeah, totally. And one thing I must say, one thing I did find funny was in the post-race press conference where Leclerc said, "Yeah, no, we've spoken about it. It's all good." And then Sainz was like, "No, we haven't spoken yet." But that was just something small. I found that a little bit funny, but it speaks to what you said. You know, good intentions at least. Obviously, Sainz, I think in the past years was forced to play a team game
For sure.
for the sake of his contract, and I think it's great this year to see him saying, "Well, I don't need to do that so much anymore. So yeah, I'm not so interested."
Exactly, yeah.
And he's doing fantastic. Um, yeah, it was finally, yeah, I want to say finally, but Danny Rick beat Tsunoda.
And convincingly as well. Not
Yeah,
not not a small deficit. Not like if you look at the race pace delta, Danny was significantly faster throughout the entire race weekend. He was significantly faster in qualifying. And he did, I mean, you cannot fault him. He did a bang up job this weekend. He was in contention for points when his teammate was struggling. And that's really what you need from your drivers is you need somebody contending for points, especially when the margins that low down in the grid are that
yeah,
minute.
sure.
You really do need somebody like that. And I think Danny handled this weekend perfectly. We'll get into the situation with Lance in a little bit because that was really, really, really unlucky and unfortunate, especially for Daniel.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, big ups to him. I think that the chassis change out is maybe it's like a mental thing where he's just had a little bit of a mental
I
reset.
think it is. I think it is, and he was very open about it. He said, you know, I do think it is part in my head, but and yeah, I'm still hesitant. It was a once off. I'm wondering if that can now change his confidence that he can carry it through. But yeah, I'm not prepared to go with the side of, oh, he's back, he's
Oh
ready to
yeah, for
push
sure.
this. It
I
is
mean,
one race.
you can't really jump. I mean, I know that there's a lot of wishy-washy fans in F1, and there's a lot of wishy-washy pundits as well who jump race to race and jump on bandwagons and the newest.
Yeah,
There's a new hype man race to race. Carlos Sainz is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and into this weekend where everybody's like kind of dogging him for his performance during the race and getting kind of run over by Charles a bit by like 12 seconds during the Grand Prix. Um, Everybody would kind of is just so everybody's so fickle in the sport. It's quite hard to actually formulate an opinion if you're new into the sport, but I guess that's kind of what you would expect from them. But again, not going to say that Daniel Ricciardo's back. Not going to say he's the lead driver in AlphaTauri in VCarb. Not going to say Tsunoda's now a terrible driver. I just really, in terms of weekend to weekend, this was a great weekend from Daniel. We'll have to
for
see if
sure.
that continues, as you said.
And just going to the chat, Caden Noe Tsunoda hasn't raced in China, and I think that is an important point. But it's also worth noting that I think it's a bit of double-edged sword in terms of Tsunoda hasn't driven there, and Daniel Rick has been fantastic around that circuit in the past. It was definitely one of his standout tracks in Red Bull racing. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of a double whammy. Um, yeah, you want to talk about our favorite driver of the year, Lance Stroll?
God, I hate him. I really despise him. His
Get him out.
his smug little Canadian fucking smile bothers me. The way he's sitting there in the interview. Yeah, no, it's not my fault. No, it's like, brother. What is this? You drove into the back of him. Like, hello, dude. There is a brake pedal next to the accelerator. You can press it and you can stop. But exactly what he said. Daniel came out of the race, straight into an interview, and he said, I have watched the onboards, and Stroll was looking to his right. He was looking at the corner. He was not paying attention.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I cannot fathom how in any reality Lance Stroll does not take the blame for that. Yes, there's a concertina effect, but why is Lance Stroll the only person who made contact? The rest of
That's
the
exactly
drivers are competent enough to be able to press the brake pedal. Lance Stroll is in his own little fairy Canadian land and just not paying attention to the bloody race. And I don't know, that just really grates my balls.
It just seems to me that sometimes he just lacks like this racing instinct, because exactly as he's, all other drivers did not struggle once. Nobody else hit. As Oscar Piastri said, yeah, you were the only one who basically crashed. So if anyone would do this, it's Stroll. Crashing under the safety car, that's some F123 the video game shit, man. That can't be happening in real life, bro. Like, what?
I cannot fathom. I mean, I'm 100% sure that he's not as focused because he knows his seat is secure. There's no questions.
That's true. Some of this is not happening.
But still, surely, he had such a stellar junior career. And his first couple of years in F1 were decent. He had promise. How has he turned into a fucking sack of potatoes? I don't understand it. How? He went from somebody who was a podium contender in a Williams. Okay, granted, back in those days, the Williams was still rocking the best power unit. And, I mean, they had a decent-ish car. But he was contending points. And then he steps into the racing point, and he gets podiums. He got a pole position. And now he's
That's
just
so
like...
true.
It's like he's missing hands. Because ever since that bike accident, I'm telling you, that bike accident, pre-season 2022, that is what ruined his career. Because before that, I swear he wasn't this incompetent. He was decent.
And I just feel so bad for him. Well, no, I don't feel bad for him. But what I'm getting at is it's just like he's so embarrassing. Because nobody, and I don't blame them, but nobody can take him seriously. Like,
it's tragic.
Yeah, I'm just having mainly processing issues. Like, when I watched that, I just sat there for a solid 30 seconds. Like, first of all, if anyone, of course, it's Stroll, and second of all, nobody else is doing that. So that was shocking because, and I also really felt the 10-second penalty was a slap on the wrist.
No, it was not enough.
Like, Ricciardo's done.
He got a
race ruined.
He also got a three-place grid penalty for safety car procedure in the next Grand Prix.
For overtaking Hulkenberg.
Okay, but I mean that was like, come on.
Agreed.
Even the Logan Sargent 10-second penalty when I believe it was Magnussen coming out of the pit lane, brother, they got to that white line at the exact same moment, and they gave him a 10-second penalty for that. I think the FIA were cooked this weekend completely. I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more.
I mean, 10 seconds, and now he's taken out two people's race because Oscar Piastri after that was visibly slower. Obviously, half his diffuser was gone almost. So that was just, I don't know, man. I'm losing my patience with the FIA because it's just like, first of all, Alonso versus Sainz, the penalty they cited was because of overtaking procedures, basically, which, looking at that, they were perfectly alongside. You can say Alonso left him no space, but it was definitely not the overtaking procedures they discussed.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting tired of them labeling stuff badly in terms of saying, well, we feel it was a penalty. Okay, I can agree with that. What's your reasoning? And then it's bullshit.
The only thing that I can't... I think Alonso maybe deserved the penalty because that was at most a Hail Mary. It was a very, very, very ambitious lunge down the inside to try and reclaim that pace.
Agreed.
So, I mean,
Completely agreed.
granted, I mean, you can do that. It is racing. Carlos Sainz has mirrors and eyes. He can just not turn into the corner and kind of play the game. But when you have that many cars backed up behind you, I think you just want to get the overtake done and get on with it. But
what a train.
I mean, listen, I think that Fernando's penalty probably was justified to a sense, but again, the FIA just labeling overtaking procedures, labeling safety car procedures, it's ridiculous. Lance Stroll, there are two certainties in Formula One: Max Verstappen winning, and Lance Stroll being an inbred. It is incredible how low, like, just racing IQ, and his
Yes.
like his actual just
Instinct. Also, it's
diabolical.
when he has to make small decisions in a small amount of time, he doesn't have it, which it's okay, but when you're an F1 driver, that's a pretty big problem.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody needs to send him Concerto or Ritalin or something so he can actually stay awake for a whole Grand Prix weekend. Because, I don't know. This is getting bonkers, man. And it's so polarizing to see.
When you're going where I was going, yeah?
It's so polarizing to see how Fernando Alonso is dragging that Aston Martin to its results. And he is smashing it this year. And he's driving like a machine. And then you get Lance Stroll.
Especially on Saturdays.
It's tragic, man. It is really so tragic. What was the gap? The gap in between Lance Stroll's qualifying time in Q3 as opposed to Fernando's in Q1, or also in Q3. I think it was like 1.4, 1.5 seconds. The gap between the two drivers in the same machinery, the same car. How is that possible?
Yeah, and Fernando's been quite open. He's said a few times, look, this car shouldn't be where it is on Saturday, and of course, Alonso being Alonso and thinking he's the best thing since sliced bread will tell you, well, all the other drivers are not pulling their weight. On Saturdays, they're making mistakes. They can't pull laps together. And then on Sunday, suddenly they can. And I think it just shows the great work, that Fernando Alonso is doing on those Saturdays, because he is doing exactly what you need out of him. And for him to be doing it at that age is phenomenal. He is literally just going, where there's an opportunity, I will be there. And
I mean,
that's what you need to be like that right now.
Full respect to him.
Oh.
No, that... Okay, I got quite angry watching all of the interviews after this. I was like Danny Rick, where I was post-race, I was watching the interviews, and then when they said to Danny Rick that Lance Stroll was blaming him, and then Danny Rick said what? I was just starting to calm down, but now that makes me really angry. It's the same thing. I feel the same way, man. You get to the post-race, and I know I actually had a phone call with Caden after the race, speaking about the incident. Caden said he watched it back a whole bunch of times. I actually then went and watched it back a whole bunch of times again. And yes, the concertina effect is hectic, and it is quite a difficult situation. Definitely. And I mean, it's really awkward that Fernando locked two soft tires into that corner and caused it all. But there was sufficient time to alter his steering, to brake, to not be staring at the apex, to be looking at the car in front of him. Surely you can at least see in your peripheral vision that there's now a stationary object in front of your vehicle. And I don't know. It's just...
And I think what it resulted from is that he keeps putting himself in these positions where he needs to start driving super aggressively to make up for his qualifying.
Exactly.
His qualifying, he's out in Q1, and now in a situation like that, exactly what happened was, he looked to the apex, and why is he doing that? He's trying to judge when they go so that he can get a better jump on the cars in front.
Exactly, yeah.
And, exactly what happened. They braked, and all of a sudden, while he's not looking there, and he has no peripheral, he has no racing instinct, and boom. No. 3 cars into each other.
I can spend 3 days calling Lance Stroll bad names, listing off how many reasons I hate him, and...
You should go sell encyclopedias, JB.
Bro, I don't know. I think he should just go and mop floors. He seems more cut out to be the janitor type than the Formula 1 driver type, but that's besides the point. I mean, listen, I think Aston Martin has now a very interesting spot in the hypercar space. I think Lance Stroll needs to reconsider whether Formula One is the correct category for him. Because if he wants to keep faffing around in obscurity while his teammate outshines him by a mile, I really do feel like maybe Lance needs just a little bit of an environment change. And I pray that that happens. I want the Aston Martin lineup to be Yuki Tsunoda and Fernando Alonso when the Honda partnership comes in.
Insane.
Because I do believe Honda will produce a bang-up engine for the new regulations, and I believe the Aston Martin package will get even more competitive. Having Yuki Tsunoda, a really stupidly quick driver with a little bit of kind of a mistake in him here and there, and a bad weekend here and there, as opposed to a Lance Stroll who is bad weekend after bad weekend after bad weekend, it's going to be so much more beneficial. And surely there has to become a stage where Lawrence Stroll will realize how much money he is losing in constructors' standings, in sponsorships, in investors' money. All of that has to start playing a role, and surely Lawrence Stroll will then speak to him and say, listen, my boy, there is a spot for you. You will still be a racing driver in a series where you will likely be competitive.
Yes.
Would you not prefer to do that? And I pray when that day comes, Lance will make the move. I
totally agree. Yeah, I completely agree, because right now it is just embarrassing for the sport and embarrassing for him. I mean, it's just not. He keeps blaming the car, and then you look across the garage and Fernando Alonso is killing it, and you're like, no.
Yeah.
So Jinx just commented, what do we think of what's going on with Andretti?
I respect.
That's an interesting situation. I think, and hear me out, I think this is quite an American approach. It's like,
for sure. Oh no, without doubt.
And they're pulling it off pretty well, so at least they're committing. But it's very much like, you guys said no, well, we'll just throw so much money and put it, a facility right next to the track. Now say no again. We know you probably will, but it's going to be really difficult.
Exactly that. And I mean, I cannot understate how much I respect the Andretti Motorsport Company for doing what they're doing right now. They have made a claim that in every single FIA sanctioned motorsport, they will have a team. That is that is their statement. That is their mission. If we get a Andretti car in every motorsport, I don't think there's a single manufacturer on the planet that has that at the moment. Not one. And if they pull it off, it's just going to keep, and the more motorsports they enter, the more it's going to keep mounting pressure on F1 for these small. Okay, granted, I mean, we were dogging on Haas at the start of the season, and I mean, they've had a decent one so far. But still, a name like Haas does not belong in Formula One. A name like Andretti does. A name like Lance Stroll does not belong in Formula One. But, okay, besides the point. I do think I would love to see an Andretti-backed team. Probably if they could either buy out Haas, or they definitely won't become an 11th team. They won't be 11 teams.
I wanted to speak about that, because and I know we touched about it a little bit in the past, but it's something that just sits wrong with me. I don't like this whole idea of we're gonna have 10 F1 teams for the next 50 years. And that's the way FOM is approaching it right now. Is it seems like they're very set on, like, it's gonna be 10, and if they change the Concord agreement, it could further cement that there are only 10 teams, which I get the logic at the moment, because these are the teams that sort of, suffered and got through COVID and stuff like that, so they should I get that. But turning down a team like Andretti, who will bring in Cadillac, who will bring in a huge tie to the American markets, which is already what Formula One is appealing to with the tracks, I just don't get how you say, no, only 10 and off we go. I mean, it's not like there's been 10 teams for the whole of Formula One. They've done it before. They've had 24 drivers on a grid, 26 drivers on a grid before. So that, if it was 20 drivers for the whole history, that's a different story.
For sure. And I mean, the thing is, right, the big concern for the teams at the moment is nobody wants to reduce the size of their pie. Why
Yeah.
not just increase the size of the pie? That would make so much more sense. In my eyes, surely the reason that the cost cap was implemented was A, to allow for more competitive space and not allow the big teams to run away with it. But B, surely it was to entice new constructors.
That's exactly
Because
it, because
it
you
gives you
bring
the
the barrier of
opportunity,
entry.
exactly, it gives you the opportunity as a new constructor to come into the sport and have an option, a viable option to be competitive off the bat. Instead of like what
Yeah.
we saw with Virgin and HRT and all of these teams
Marussia.
that they were muddling around in obscurity because they had a fraction of the budget that the competitive teams were running on. The only team
Yeah.
that we saw outside of the cost cap area that was able to make one of those shoestring budgets work was Force India, which then became Racing Point. And that's surely because Otmar Zafnauer was very, very, very frugal and smart with the way that he delegated the money in the team. And surely bringing the price down, the cost cap down, allowing and making it more appealing for new constructors to be able to enter the sport, why would you limit yourself to those 10 teams? However, this is where I think we will not see 11 teams in Formula One for a long time. The only options I see for new constructors to enter is buying out teams, or if the FIA releases a new rule that says the same company cannot run and operate two Formula One teams, which is essentially what, well, technically not the same company, but you know what I'm saying, with V-Carb and Red Bull.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only way I can see a new constructor entering the sport, is either they buy out
Which is so
Haas.
sad.
It's terrible,
I
but
do
I
agree
mean,
with you. I agree
I
with
don't
you.
know.
In reality, that is the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just it's at some point you need to pull the trigger and say, okay, now's the time that we've given you guys a share of money. Now we want to keep expanding, keep growing. It's perfect to bring in another team, and I'm just scared that F1 is gonna pull a fairly classic F1 move of getting too caught up in the money rather than sacrificing a few years of growth for a bigger pie.
Exactly that, yeah.
So, and yeah, credits to Andretti for literally just building like a whole facility and factory and going, well, we're gonna be here regardless.
As you said, it is the most American approach they could have possibly done. They've slapped the long dick of democracy onto the table and they said, here's our cards. We've built the factory. We've got the capital. We've got the backing. We've got Cadillac. What are you going to say?
Say no now.
Exactly.
Say no.
I love it. I love it. It's such a it's I feel like you have to almost take a proactive approach like that if you even want to be considered to become a constructor these days. Which
I'm
is
just
quite
interested. I think the only issue and the only reason it would blow up would be the precedent it sets.
Sad. Oh yeah, for
That's
sure.
the only concern.
For sure.
Because
Next thing you're gonna
if
get.
they now say yes, and then all of a sudden people are just building factories in Enstone and Brackley and stuff and going, well, Andretti did it, so
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. I feel like FIA needs to nip it in the butt, but I just don't understand how they're handling this. I think it's Liberty Media that owns Formula One, right?
correct. Yeah,
I think
the FOM.
Liberty needs to get a bit more involved. They need to. I don't know. I almost feel like the FIA and Formula One together are quite corrupt at the moment with kind of what is going
When
on.
have they not been, Jordan? Let's
Well,
get real.
listen. Okay. Listen. When Michael Massey was in charge, shit was sailing smooth, except for when it actually came to the racing. But besides that, we didn't have as
The
many
full
scandals.
concept of F1, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think. Listen, I really hope that maybe either Gene Haas gets fed up with fucking around in the bottom of the constructors and playing for scraps and allows a real team with real motorsport lineage to step in and actually have a bash at it.
Yeah.
I think it would be so cool just to have a Cadillac Works team, because we haven't really had a team like that before in Formula One, where it's been like, through and through and through American. I mean,
No, I'm trying to think now. We've had, there were a lot of Ford, obviously, engine partnerships in
Yeah.
the 70s and 80s, but I can't really think of,
Arrows?
at least not a
No,
successful.
Arrows was a British team.
I think so, and at least not a successful American team, let's say that much.
For sure.
So,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
hopefully, here's holding thumbs. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, speaking of we said that racing was the core of F1. I've been seeing quite a few rumors now. I don't even know if I should bring attention to this because I feel like it's quite stupid. Um, but some of the kind of workers and teams and some of the Formula One drivers are starting to take quite political standpoints to what's going on in the Middle East right now. And there's been a lot of rumors that kind of from like next year onwards that there's going to be a lot of boycotts around those races. And if that starts happening, I don't know what to really think because we've got Bahrain, we've got Qatar, we've got Saudi, we've got Abu Dhabi. I mean, if we start boycotting races in the Middle East, I can pretty much imagine what the intentions behind the boycotts are. I haven't seen the reasoning, but I can imagine what the reasoning is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like
I'm sure the
I don't even
FIA
want to.
president will be happy.
Yeah, I don't even want to bring rumors like this to light because I mean it's just been some, rumors out of the paddock have been this week that these drivers are saying this,
Yeah.
but it's like if everybody can make a stand against shit like that, right? Why is nobody making a stand currently against kind of the FIA and the way that they're handling things? Because it feels like the FIA is just getting away with whatever they want. And the only way that we're going to get any change is kind of like through these examples of straight up protests and straight up kind of
Yeah.
boycotts. That's the only way I can see anything getting done. I don't know what is going on at the moment, but it really
And what
does feel
blows
that
my
way.
mind is that the FIA just doesn't care about reputation because if they took one look on the internet, they would see that they are getting absolutely slaughtered and rightfully so because some of it it's the penalties I would rather have fewer penalties but they actually mean more so that if it's a case of well you send someone off the track, well instead of a 10-second penalty, well no now you got to drive through tough, rather than dishing out penalties left, right and center. And their reasoning, that's what bothers me is that they give certain reasoning and then you go and you check back and you go, but no, like for example, Sainz and Alonso, no, you didn't leave him any space. It wasn't what they cited, and that's very bad for the transparency.
For sure, and I mean,
especially for newer fans, it's not.
I suppose it also makes it quite hard for a driver to protest a penalty because
100%.
what I feel like the FIA is tired of is kind of post 2021 Abu Dhabi where we had the absolute shitstorm with race control and teams protesting calls, and obviously that they're probably trying to set a precedent now where they don't want teams to appeal their decisions, but you can't.
Which is also a dangerous territory.
That is terrible. You cannot have that happening, and that is just. It's ridiculous. I don't know why, but it feels like I've been watching a lot of IndyCar recently, right?
Yeah.
And IndyCar is populated by, granted, a very interesting, diverse group of drivers who are some more competent than others. However, the drivers seem quite united when it comes to like unfair penalties and unfair results. They actually have a clause, if I'm not mistaken, somebody who's more into IndyCar can probably correct me. If the IndyCar teams do not accept a result, it doesn't get posted. And granted, that would need a unanimous support, but I just feel like that is something that needs to realistically be looked at because you cannot have it. Almost feels like the FIA is this totalitarian kind of entity, and whatever they say goes. There's no questions, no ifs, no buts, no maybes.
Yeah.
And as you said, the big thing, like when you're speaking about Alonso, even Alonso and Russell was cited as driving standards. It's like, come on, guys. You have an entire rule book with how many articles and how many subsections and sub-paragraphs in this that you can cite as to the reasons for giving penalties.
You can be a bit more specific. Yeah.
Exactly that. So, I don't know. It's, as you said, for new fans, it gets quite frustrating because they don't actually follow why these penalties are being handed out. But yeah.
And I totally agree. Yeah, they are, now that you bring it up, yeah, they are becoming these either very niche things that it's like, there's one subsection, one sentence on it, and it's very unclear and gray area. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I think the FIA needs to do some PR work. Mohammed bin Sulayem also, he has not been a very impressive FIA president in my eyes.
The only time we've heard his name is in scandals.
scandals or just like fucked up things, like like him having his mini war with Hamilton about piercings and stuff, and you know,
Yeah, I don't know.
so completely, dude, completely.
I see James has asked about the point system. I
Yeah,
don't know if you heard about that. I think,
I like that.
correct me if I'm
I
wrong, but
like it.
it's points down to 12.
Correct.
I, I hate it.
You hate it.
I think only the top 8 teams should score points. I don't think that half the grid scoring points in Formula 1 does not cut it. The top 8 drivers should score points. Granted, the current point system, I mean, the amount of points handed out probably needs a bit of a revision. But if you get somebody who can finish 10th in a race, he's past 50% of the cars. He's only in the top. Why are we awarding the top 50%? Why are we awarding 10th, 9th and 10th extra points for mediocre drivers? Yes, granted, there's that whole divide between the midfield and the front running teams, and that would just run away. But then you work it out based on race results. You don't need to keep awarding these points.
That's one of my arguments, is that I think, especially for newer fans and even fans like us who are very committed, near the end of the season it gets quite tough to see why is this team above them. Oh, because they had more 11th finishes. Whereas if you have points to 12, you can just say, well, this team's above because they got more points.
I mean,
so I think it eliminates the complexity of countbacks due to race results out of the points.
So what I would kind of ideally
and that's one of the main reasons I like it.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the things that I would like to see is top 8 point scores. You get points P8 through P1. Then you just get, all you need to do is you just need to do an average finishing position. Say this driver finished this place in this race, and then you add up all of their finishes and you divide it by the amount of races. That's the average finishing position. Then you do the exact same thing with the other driver. You add those two and you do the same thing. It just, for me, that just seems to work, and that I just don't understand how we can reward a 10th and a 9th place drive. That does not seem like something that is reward worthy in my eyes.
Another argument I would make is that points down to 12 rewards consistency far more. Because currently what we have, Haas is likely to run away with those positions because getting those points for the other teams is like impossible.
Oh, for sure. I understand what you're saying.
Williams need the complete stars to align to get 4 points, and then they're back in business. But those 4 points, oh my god, they're impossible.
For sure.
So that's one thing I also like about it, is that it takes away those fluky weekends where Haas all of a sudden qualifies 4th because they were just in the right place in the right time and they score a boatload, and now because of one weekend they get a ton of money. And I think it also demotivates what we had in the past years from both Williams and Haas, where they were just making cars saying, we just need one good weekend. We'll make it really good at this one thing.
Yeah.
Pick up points and then cruise the rest of the year.
For sure.
So I think at least it disincentivizes that. I do see your point.
I completely agree. One thing that I will say that I really don't like about the current point system is how many points are being awarded. Because it does feel like,
that I agree,
even if you have a couple of good weekends during a season, as long as the other driver who's had the other good amount of kind of weekends, the point deficit that you earn between P10 or, well, ideally what I would want, P8 and P1 is way too big. Like,
yeah, 25, yeah.
There's a 24 point difference between 10th and 1st. And that just makes for uninteresting championships in my eyes. Because say somebody has been super consistent P3 the whole time, and then you get a guy who wins, then he gets crashed out, then wins, then reliability, then wins. The season will still be over before the final 3 races. And
that's a very good point.
If the actual gap between the points was a bit smaller, we would have a lot more exciting conclusions to seasons. For example, 2007, where Hamilton binned in China, and then we had the whole debacle in Brazil, where he obviously got put onto a really cuck 3-stop strategy and it kind of threw the championship away. That 1 point, if he had made P6 and gotten that singular point, it would have been a tie championship. And I believe on race wins, the statistic of race wins, Lewis Hamilton would have claimed the title.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can see where P12 can be a thing. Like, obviously Yuki Tsunoda got that reign of P11s, and if there was points awarded from that, Alpha Tauri would have been
Yeah,
a lot more secure in their
for sure.
standings. But I don't know.
I wonder if there's maybe a nice middle ground between us in terms of maybe you put the points still 12 and you just start giving out, like, for example, 12 is half a point,
oh yeah, for sure. No, I
because
mean that could
we,
work.
we, we are in a region where we've seen half points before. And
Yeah,
I think maybe something like, changing it to, yeah, 25 or 20 all the way to 12, that would work because I do agree with you at 100%. The key is to win or crash out because second and third just doesn't do it. It's 10 points difference between first and third, which is mental,
yeah,
absolute crazy. I mean, that's literally
yeah.
10 place finishes. So
It's mad, and
yeah,
yeah, I can see. I think
yeah,
probably that's a good idea. I just there's something in my brain that doesn't sit right with kind of awarding more than 50% of the grid with points. That just
that's true. It's a bit of an like
six
odd
awarding
number. Yeah,
60% of the drivers with points who enter a weekend. Like points are supposed to be valuable, and something that you need to fight really hard for and have a fantastic race to earn. And I mean, granted, we're in a series where the FIA's kind of the car regulations don't allow for super competitive racing, and they don't allow for like the 2012 season, for example. I'll always come back to that, where I feel like those regulations between
23,
2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, those were bang on
23.
regulations because they allowed for so many competitive constructors. I just feel like the current regulations do not allow us for to have the point system that I would prefer in Formula One, if that makes sense.
That's fair. That's fair.
If it was
Um,
more interchangeable weekend to weekend, like if all of the points kind of were up in the air based on driver performance, I think we should for sure do top eight. But yeah, I mean I can see both sides of the argument, but I don't know about 60% of drivers getting points in a weekend.
yeah, and that was something I was also sitting with. Just yeah, because yeah, there's nothing you haven't said. Just the case that yeah, points should be something to work for and a big deal. Going down to 12th, that does start to lose some of the magic. But yeah, I just keep going back to the watchability.
Oh, for
The
sure.
American fans will be able to digest it so much easier
Oh, for
rather
sure.
than what we would do, which would be to go and check their result finishing. That's a bit much for I think most casual fans.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
No, that's fair enough.
yeah, Jenks, I agree. I would very comfortably say let's go down to 12 if we let Andretti in
Oh
because that
yeah.
solves both of our issues because then it's 50%
Oh
to the grid
yeah.
again and off we go. But I don't know. It's just, I think it's also just the number system we've grown up with being base 10. That 10 just sounds nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Like top 10 sounds nice. And I think that's also part of it that it's just like, I don't know, that doesn't sit right in my head, like.
For sure. No, I mean, yeah, I completely agree. If there's an 11th constructor, then we can increase the
Yeah,
amount of points places, but kind of as is, it just doesn't sit right with me. But
that's fair.
I guess from a competitive standpoint, we kind of have two different categories almost in the same race. We have Max in the front, Max versus himself, then the rest of the front runners, and then that pretty much takes up all of the points playing positions. And the only hope is for somebody to DNF or have a shocker of a weekend. And I mean, granted, there is one points place available because Stroll is just Stroll. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't.
I do want to go. Yeah.
I was going to say I would probably have to go and sit down and put a lot more thought into exactly the reasons why, but I really haven't thought about it too much because I mean I only found out that they were thinking about this yesterday.
Same.
Yeah.
Thanks, Crafty.
Oh well.
Yeah, I just want to touch a bit more on Norris because we didn't really get into his
Oh yeah.
race
Hang
this
on.
weekend, and really his sprint was obviously it's difficult to say it's disappointing because of one mistake, but ultimately it was a very costly mistake. Um, but his Sunday race pace phenomenal. I mean, to be out of touch of Perez, yes, Perez had to use up a lot of his tires, but still great management, great mature drive. As I mentioned earlier, his teammate just couldn't really get on top of things this weekend, and Norris used it to kind of show the experience. And yeah, I'm interested to see how their upgrades develop further because obviously McLaren from last year were ungodly in doing in-season upgrades, absolutely insane. So that'll be exciting to see. Um,
Yeah,
when are their big upgrades coming? Is it also Imola? I know normally it's the first European race.
I know that the biggest upgrade package coming to Imola is the Ferrari updates.
Okay.
I believe McLaren is bringing a decent sized upgrade. Actually, I've got a photo. I've got a photo. Young Caden Argyle sent me a photo of the proposed upgrades. Here we go. So the I believe that these are all coming in Imola. So there's an update to the front to the rear wing. That's surely reliability reasonings. There is a update to the engine cover. That is performance under local load. That is an upgrade
Okay.
designed to deal with that. There are now there's new cooling systems. It allows for more circuit specific cooling range. There is a floor body, which is probably the biggest change that's going to be happening, which
That's
is
big
also
news, yeah.
that's also performance based. That's a new diffuser, underbody floor and floor edge geometry. All of that's getting changed out.
Okay.
Um, they're getting new side pod shapes and new mirror stay positions. Then the rear corner is circuit specific, also for cooling reasons. Um, it's internal ducts just for cooling. Then they're also doing an RBD scoop winglet. Then the last is the engine cover, which is also designed for cooling, which is trims on the side pods, engines covers, and additional cooling exit gurneys. So all of that is coming in Imola, if I'm not mistaken. That is a pretty sizable upgrade to be upgrading that many different parts of the car at that point in the season, which I could see probably projecting them further and further and further away from the chasing pack. Um, I believe Ferrari still has the biggest upgrade. They're not even keeping the same car name. They're changing it to Dash 2. So the
Yeah.
SF23 Dash 2 was it the SF24, whatever it is, Dash 2. They
Could be the SF75. Who
could
knows with Ferrari naming conventions?
I don't know, but basically they're releasing essentially a second edition of the same car with this big
Yeah,
upgrade
fair enough.
package. Rumors, again, this is Italian media. Take it with a pinch of salt. Rumors are that there's about 1.2 to 1.3 seconds of lap time in that upgrade. Which,
That's impressive.
if that happens, bro, we've got a Ferrari championship. Because I mean, that just sounds unrealistic to me.
Yeah.
That big of a jump through one upgrade package just doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah, I totally agree. And normally what comes up is even if they do find that much time, then Red Bull just turns it up a bit and off they go in terms of, Max Verstappen has always got that extra bit hiding in his pocket.
For sure.
That when he wants to show off or something comes out and off he goes on pole by 0.4 seconds or whatever.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
So,
the quali gaps over these past two races have been a bit concerning, if I'm honest. Kind of the gaps, sort of not really in Japan because Sergio Perez was super close in Japan, but I mean the gap on this weekend between the pole lap and second place was like 3.5 tenths. The race, there's
yeah,
been quite a few races where he's been 3-4 tenths clear, and we need some big upgrades to come from the front two, aka the front two competitors such as Ferrari and McLaren, to really actually give us a little bit more spice towards the end of the season. Because I mean, we've already seen that the Red Bull isn't impenetrable. We saw what happened in Australia. I doubt that
yep,
they will have another kind of issue like that. Red Bull's not known for their reliability tanks. Um, but yeah, I suppose we'll see as the upgrades go. Imola is kind of probably what I see as the flashpoint of the season. That's where we're really gonna see kind of how
totally,
competitive the
totally,
entire grid is in relation to Red Bull.
yeah. Mercedes is also bringing some upgrades to both Miami and Imola, so that'll
Mm.
be exciting. But
Much needed.
I have very little hope given past experiences. But I think if they do finally work, then Mercedes will be very optimistic going forward because, as we've discussed in previous episodes, one of their biggest concerns is on the computer, it's like, yeah, we've gotten a second out of this new rear wing. Let's go. Gets to the track and it's 0.1 second advantage. And you're
For
like,
sure.
wow, that was disappointing. And Toto Wolff hasn't been handling this well. You can see he's a bit out of his depth in dealing with the shitty team because he's like, yeah, no, we're going to crack down and work this instead of being more honest. And then it comes and people are pissed off all over again.
For sure.
So that'll be interesting. I wanted a question for you. What do you think about F1 bringing back a tire war?
I mean, okay, listen. There's pros and cons. I do think Pirelli over the past couple of seasons has done a pretty shit job, if I'm honest. I don't think that they're doing well. I really don't. I mean, we had that whole tire blowout scandal that was going on a while back, and I mean, we really do not have a big enough variety in the compounds that are allowed to be used over a weekend.
We don't even have a wet tire.
Exactly, yeah, and I mean that's one of my big qualms. Why, whenever it is wet enough to run the wet tires, do we get a red flag? What is the objective of having a wet tire in that situation? Like, as soon as it gets past inters, we red
Just
flag the race.
Yeah, just remove it so that you don't at least, sort of break fans' hopes, because it's like finally we're gonna see the wet, and then because I haven't seen that wet tire being used in the last 2-3 years easily.
The only wet tire lap that I saw was Kevin Magnussen Brazil in 2022.
Yep.
That was the only. There was only a singular lap,
Inters.
and it wasn't even that he pitted after that lap to go onto inters because inters were quicker. It wasn't even a time lap. I think the last really influential wet tires that we saw was kind of like when we were in Belgium in 2021, where everybody was going around for 4 laps behind the safety car, and they awarded half points for the weekend. That was literally the last time I saw the wet tires on a car during race conditions, and I just think the only issue I can see is kind of what we saw with Bridgestone, where they got the tires right and everybody else got them wrong, or when Firestone had their little run of success. If you pick the wrong tires, it might doom your entire season, which might be a bit of an issue, but I'm not too sure. I think it could be interesting. It's always going to be interesting, but
it was just something I was thinking of because I really think, Pirelli is just getting too comfortable. And I think, I was rewatching the 2006 Chinese Grand Prix, and it was raining and shit, and all of a sudden it stopped raining, and then Michael Schumacher came through the pack because, well, now the Bridgestones are faster than, it was Bridgestone and Michelin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, Fernando Alonso, who was dominating the lead, started falling back a bit because the Bridgestones were fast. And I just thought another layer like that could help break up the predictability, because all of a sudden Red Bull, who has the advantageous, tire company, needs one weekend like the Brickyard where, well, we can't take that corner like you guys can. Well, it sucks to be you. Okay, the race goes on.
Yeah.
So... yeah, that might be interesting.
I don't know. I crave competitive Formula One. Like, every now and then...
natural competitive Formula One.
Every now and then we get a season where we are blessed by more than one title contender. And those seasons everybody holds on to as their little bit of copium, their little bit of hope that maybe one day we'll see something like it. But, yeah, again, I mean, I just think that domination is bad in any sport. Kind of makes it predictable and unwatchable. That's why a majority of people who don't watch F1 say that they don't watch F1 because it's boring. But if we had like seasons on repeat like 2012, where every single person on the planet would be a Formula One fan.
And what's crazy is that 2012 kind of points at everything. Like 2012 is everything that they are trying to achieve now, but not, because 2012's racing was not good.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The actual racing was not good. But I would, any day of the week, take bad racing but a good championship fight than what we have now.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, we don't really have a Pastor Maldonado, but we do have some chaotic drivers, for sure, that would throw in some chaos into seasons like that. You don't need lots of overtakes if every race there's a different winner. Like, I mean...
Exactly
that. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just nostalgia that I'm hanging on to, but I just pray that one day we're going to get back to a state where we're going to see multiple cars in contention at the same time.
I think F1 fans just live on copium, don't they? Like, it's
For
just this
sure.
idea of one day we will get back to it, and then it comes, and we all have a great year, and then it's like, okay, now wait another 6 years till like
Oh yeah.
it, and it always the most painful thing I think in Formula One, and it's ingrained in its DNA, is that the most exciting season is always the last season of the regulations,
That is so factual. That's why I've been
and then
quite
you just
excited
sit
for
there and
next
you're
year.
like, why are we changing? No.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like actually that would be an interesting point. I would maybe later on in the week we can record a video on what we think about kind of extending a regulation cycle. That could be I haven't seen anybody speak about that. If we extended a regulation cycle by a couple of years to allow everybody to get to a similar standpoint and just have an absolute
I
dog
think
war towards the
would be
front.
interesting because currently F1 just gets too concerned about, we got to change it, we got to upset the order, and then one team hits the ground running and they're locked in for the next 4 years, and as everyone converges, it's like, well, new season.
Yeah, they disrupt the order with a different order. It's just
It's,
yeah.
exactly, and then it's just somebody else who dominates. So yeah,
Well, Miami is next week. No, it's not next week. It's the next race, I believe.
yeah,
We're going off to Miami,
we've got a
so
bit of a break.
I can imagine that would be quite similar in terms of kind of
I think it's gonna be boring as
results.
hell.
But yeah, I think probably the real flashpoint of the season is Imola, which is the Grand Prix after Miami. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can just we'll just have to suffer through one more Verstappen weekend, and then hopefully we're going to see some big upgrades that allow more cars to
Hopefully.
challenge more consistently.
Yeah. I'll be dreaming, man. I'll be praying.
Yeah. Well, let's wait and see. But I don't know if we should keep this going too much longer. It's already approaching that 1 hour mark. Um,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, overall decent weekend. Not much. I mean, at least there were some talking points from it.
Good start to the sprint.
For sure, exactly that, and hopefully we're going to get a little bit more kind of chaos in the next Grand Prix. Obviously, Miami.
I'm
Through
just tired
recent
of it being
history.
Stroll. Like, can we get someone else next
Yeah,
weekend?
exactly. Let's get a Perez and Verstappen
Where's
collision.
George been? George has just been screwing himself up. Let's see some more
That's actually true.
kamikaze George.
He's
Like, where's he fighting Max again?
ever since that Australian crash, he's just been getting on with business, huh? But hopefully we'll see a bit
Boring.
more chaos in the next race. Maybe a little bit more strategy. But
Yeah.
again, I'm not too hopeful. Hopefully, Imola will be the flashpoint. But again, thank you everybody for watching. We always love
Enjoy
doing
the race
this.
in the car lot. It'll be good.
Exactly that. We always enjoy doing these kind of post weekend reviews, especially when we have talking points like the absolute complete inbred Lance Stroll. But yeah, I mean, otherwise than that, Chris, do you have anything you want to close on?
No, no. It was a good weekend. As I said, good start to the sprint. Looking forward to Miami is another sprint weekend. A bit strange with them back to back in a way, but yeah, we'll see what that brings us. I'm hoping for some more weather involvement, and yeah, let's see what different teams can bring in terms of small upgrades this weekend.
For sure. Well, we're going to leave it on that note, ladies and gentlemen. We'll leave you to your evening. We know it's getting quite late. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. As per usual, make sure to go and follow us on our socials at WheelNutsF1 on Twitter and X. We haven't really been too active on either of those platforms, but we will get to that. One thing we will like to do is if there's no race, we're going to try and start implementing a system where we maybe just upload a 10 or 15-minute video during the week just to get a little bit more engagement going, to get our opinions across, to bring up some viewpoints, just so you guys don't forget about us. But other than
Yeah, we
that,
know you guys miss us so much when we're quiet, so we'll be better at that.
for sure. But other than that, guys, please also make sure to like and subscribe. Turn on notifications if you don't want to miss the notification when we're going live. Other than that, Chris, pleasure as always. Always lovely.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy.
Can't complain, can't complain. All right. Until the next one, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you.
Cheers, cheers.